think that's a fear that everybody has, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. Hi, I'm Lauren, a writer-director living in England, and at the same time as putting on my first play in London, I'm also querying and seeking representation for my first novel, which is fantasy and sapphic, and hopefully if you're still here and I'm still talking, then you might be my target audience. Please ignore that in the background, that is my partner's and not mine, and if I learn how to blur it, then I will. This video is about my first month querying and also about the fact that I sent my book to an editor, so I'm going to be trying to guess what she thinks is wrong with my book before I get the comments back, in the hope that this is funny and not really depressing. The first thing I'm going to do is talk about 3 major weaknesses that I recognised in my book in the first draft that I think might come back up from my editor's feedback, and try and talk you through what those might be. So that you can have a look for those in your own books before you start querying them, and then talk about how my first month querying has gone and what my plans for the future are. Hopefully we're now going to have a funky title screen that says something like "Things I think are wrong with my book, but I'm querying them anyway." Please learn from me and don't do the same thing. If I was to write my book again, the first thing that I think I would change, the first thing that I would keep an eye out for, is losing steam. Looking back, I think the first half of my novel is a lot more fleshed out than the second. The world building is much better described in the first 8 chapters than I think continues in the rest of the book. I have a Fantasia, so that means that describing what I see in my head is a little bit trickier for me. I don't enjoy writing description, I'm much more of a dialogue-based person, so that's why I do plays, and I've done a little bit of TV in the past, and that's why I'll gravitate towards that instead of novels, but I feel like everyone's always wanted their name on a bookshelf somewhere, so that's just why I'm focusing on books. But I've noticed that that's my major weakness in novel writing. I really struggle to focus on description and give it the attention that it needs. And so for the first 8 chapters of the book, I noticed that there were narrative issues, and so I went back and obviously, whilst I was there, fleshed out the description, which I didn't necessarily do with the last few chapters of the book, and so I think that's going to come back to bite me. I think losing steam in general is part of the reason for that. I definitely noticed some fatigue towards finishing the book after about the 4th or 5th draft. I think I got to a sort of stage where I was like, I need someone else to look at this and tell me what's wrong, because I'll just keep changing everything. Similarly to the description not being fleshed out, I also felt that the pacing was quite fast, and towards the middle I do a bait and switch, which means that fundamentally you think the characters are doing one thing and then it turns out actually they need to do something else. I have a worry that I haven't set that up as well in the first half as I think I've done the fallout in the second half. So that's something that I think the editor might come back with and say that needs some work on, which is fine because I'm fully prepared for that. The second thing I'm concerned about are character arc weaknesses. This is my first novel that I'm trying to query, and I have 4 main characters, which most people would tell you is kind of insane. If you look at most authors' debut novels, they tend to be from 1 or 2 perspectives. You don't tend to have people, unless in the example of someone like Hannah Canna. If you look at Godkiller, she's got, I think she's got 3, she might have 4 actually, something like that, perspectives in her debut novel, but that's quite rare. I did initially try to write the novel from 2 perspectives, but it just didn't work. It was confusing and I couldn't get all the plot that I needed to get out of it, but unfortunately that means that in the iteration that I've settled on in terms of querying and sending to editors and trying to edit, I have a worry that some of the character arcs don't end in a satisfying conclusion because I'm trying to set up for a trilogy. That basically means that I've plotted out each character arc on top of the plot, and so I'll try and put some photos here of what my planning looked like with my millions of colours of posters that my partner thankfully bought me. It got a bit chaotic, and I'm worried that it's not necessarily worried that it's confusing, but I'm worried that I'm going to end up with a situation where some things are boring. One of my friends recently said that she read Throne of Glass, but she skipped all of the narrative points, all of the character point of views that she didn't like, and then was confused why the plot didn't make sense. So I'm trying to avoid a situation where readers feel the need to do that, basically. One of my, I think the 4th character, if we think of it like that, if you think of, I've got a main 2 and then another 2 that go together. The 4th character I kind of feel like has changed quite a lot since the original plot. In the original first draft manuscript, he was actually a love interest, one of the other characters, and has changed exponentially, and so I have a worry that not all of the notes of chemistry have gone from that, so it'll be interesting to see if any of that's still left in the manuscript and raises some eyebrows. There's also a lot of hidden elements with some of the character relationships that readers have to put together themselves. Some questions about relationships and siblings and that kind of thing that I'm slightly worried isn't explicit enough, but we'll see Obviously we'll see closer to the time when I get the edited notes back, and I'll make a separate video about that. I'm slightly worried that the central romance isn't explicit enough. So I was recently reading Bury Our Bones in Midnight Soil, which is by I think it's a V.E. Schwab. It's a V.E. Schwab novel, and I noticed that she's got a lot of queer romances in there, but they're very explicit. It's very much like every character is very forward, there's no question about whether they're flirting, like they're flirting, they're putting their foot down, you know what's happening with that. I don't tend to write relationships like that. I try and keep it quite, it's not how I would go about romance in my life, and I just find it a bit inauthentic, but then I worry that because obviously it's a queer romance, people won't necessarily put two and two together. So this might be something that only I'm worried about, but I've just noticed in a lot of YA and a lot of fantasy lately, it's very much jumping from A to B very quickly. They kiss once and now we're going in with both feet and we're saying what we really think, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, so I'm hoping to be a little bit more implicit and hoping that readers will put two and two together themselves, because that's what I grew up on. I grew up on Percy Jackson and trying to piece together, oh, I think he's thinking about her, and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that other people are also interested in that, but let me know how you feel about kind of more implicit romances and saying less but meaning more, I guess. Those are my main two worries. So my main two worries is just that it gets slightly less fleshed out as we go along, and also that some character arcs just need a little bit more work. I'm hoping there's not anything drastically worse than that, but we'll see what comes out of her notes. There's also some random things that I'm worried about, which we're going to talk about more now, so I'll do a little title screen here. Thank you, future me. I'm just going to rattle these off, actually, because some of them are slightly stupid. Number 1, there's a scene where characters have an 8-course meal. I tried to cut it down, it wasn't feasibly possible with the plot, and I'm worried that that's going to be boring. Also, who wants to read about 8 different courses of food? Because I don't. So yeah, if that doesn't come up in the edit, I'll be very surprised. Number 2, I named all of my mythical creatures with the same name structure, and I'm worried that it's stupid linguistically. Number 3, I'm worried that it's too similar to what's already out there. I think that's a fear that everybody has, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. 4, I'm worried the ending is too abrupt and or sudden. Without having to explain what the book's about, it's very difficult to explain what I mean by that. The ending, the fallout of this sort of finale happens in about 2 to 3 chapters. It happens in 2 to 3 chapters, but obviously we've got 4 central characters. So I'm just a little bit concerned how that's gonna play. Number 5, the ending is set up for a second book, and I'm worried that the first book won't get picked up, so I won't be able to write a sequel, in which case it will be a very bad ending for everyone involved. And that keeps me awake at night. So those are the things I'm worried about with editing. If you're editing or querying at the minute, please tell me if you have similar fears when people read your work. I've had a few friends read over the manuscript, and I think it's a bit different when someone in the kind of industry reads it. So I'm just getting all of this off my chest now. Let's talk about querying instead, shall we? In terms of how my first month querying has gone, I'd say it's been anticlimactic. I met with an agent just before I started, which I'll make a video about how I managed to do that if people are interested. But I met an agent at a writers' conference, and he gave me some good feedback on my work, but it's been a little bit tricky to kind of juggle working on that feedback, moving forward with the querying, and also this play that I'm doing, which I've made another video on if you're interested in. So this play is going to be on in 6 weeks now. And obviously trying to juggle 9 to 5 doing the play and the edits and the querying has all been a little bit much, I'll say that much. I think I sent 5 queries out at the start of the month. It was probably a month and a half ago, because I think I've been trying to give them about 8 weeks to get a response. I've had 4 no replies and one no. But it was a very thoughtful no, which was nice. I think in hindsight, I should have probably waited until the editor feedback was finished so that I could see if there were any red flags in the novel. But at that point, I think I just reached a level where I was so ready to start querying. I've worked on this novel for probably 2 years now, and I just wanted to see if it was going to go anywhere. And I think I probably jumped the gun a little bit. So yeah, I think people talk about the query trenches a lot. I don't think they talk much about how it actually feels when you start them, because I think you see a lot of people, oh, I'm in the query trenches, and then a month later they're like, oh, I got signed, so it's fine. And I feel much more in the reality of it, where it's like I could have done all of this work and it could lead to absolutely nothing. And so that is like, that takes a toll. That definitely takes a toll on feeling like it's not good enough. So the rest of my writing has definitely suffered a little bit for that, because it's just confronting that. So yeah, here's hoping next month is better. I will probably take some time out once I get the editor replies in to do some more edits for that, and I'll be focusing more on the play. So yeah, I will see you in a few weeks to talk about how the London show is going. Thanks so much for watching, and roll the credits, I guess.